It's Sunday the 28th of February. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel, and it's time for an update. We have a very special guest with us today, the captain of United's Flight 1175 that we just got done doing the NTSB report on last Friday, Captain Chris Behnam.
Yeah.
Probably.
What happened today? Damage to the fuselage.
And so here he is, Captain Chris Behnam. We're at his hangar here in Auburn. And Chris, this is your Cessna Cardinal?
Yeah, 177 RG. She's a beautiful bird. Brand new engine, brand new props, paint, glass cockpit. Super nice airplane. We're having a lot of fun with it.
You're lucky to have a hangar here in Auburn.
Yes,
It's good to get.
We haven't set it up yet. I would like to make it into a man cave, but yeah, it's a great airport, great people here, enjoying it.
Great. Okay, so let's go through this incident from the top there. The right guy at the right time, very highly experienced pilot at United Airlines. Well, let's do your background first. You're a local guy. You're Northern California. You started where?
I grew up in the Bay Area, lived in San Mateo and Hayward, went to Sierra Academy of Aeronautics, and after graduating from there, became a flight instructor, did charter work, some cargo flying, all in the Bay Area. Then joined Western Commuter in 1980 and worked there for 3 or 4 years and joined United in 1987.
87. And you've gone through a series of aircraft at United Airlines. You've been a captain for how many years at United?
About 27 years now.
Wow. And the different fleets of aircraft that you've flown at United?
I have flown the 727, 747 rope start, or the old classic, we call it.
Rope starter, yeah.
And then the 757, 767, 737, 747, 400, and now the 777. I was a check airman for a number of years, 3 years on a Boeing 737, and over 15 years on a 75 and 767, and now on the 777.
Check airman status.
Yes.
And when this incident happened in 2018, February 2018, how many hours did you have on the 777 at that time?
At that time, I only had like 200 hours on the airplane. I was pretty new on the aircraft.
Wow. Well, let's go through it from the beginning there. There you were, some 200 or so miles from Honolulu at cruise altitude. The flight originated out of San Francisco to Honolulu, so that only required a crew of 2 pilots. But the plane was so full you had a jump seater in the jump seat. And what was his, he was brand new to the 777 as well, wasn't he?
Right, so the flight was full, coming out of San Francisco, beautiful day. The airplane carries 364 people, but that day every seat was full, plus we had a number of young children under the age of 2, and we call them lappers, and there are souls on board, but they don't really count on weight manifest. So we had 381 souls on board, including the pilots and the flight attendant. And we had a jump seater, Ed Gagarin, who was commuting home to Hawaii, and Ed finished 777 IOE that morning in San Fran. So he was going home brand new out of school,
Wow.
done with the training, and I think God put him in that cockpit for a reason.
Because as the story unfolds, you'll see the important role that this third pilot played. So uneventful flight, ETOPS, obviously flight to Hawaii, and about 200 miles out, you had just taken a restroom break.
I took a restroom break. We had two guys in the cockpit, so the flight attendants did not have to come to the cockpit. At United, when somebody leaves the cockpit, you have to have another person in the cockpit. So there was Paul and Ed in the cockpit. I went to the bathroom, came back, sat down, put my seatbelt on, turned around to talk to Paul to start doing the briefing for the approach. And when that broke loose.
Yeah, and then what? So what happened?
There was a huge explosion, followed by tremendous vibration, violent vibration. And you fly 777. Like when you're up there at Mach 8.3 or 8.5, they ask you to slow down. You bring the power back. You feel a little pulling forward. As the airplane decelerates, we literally hit the glare shield. I mean, the impact was so severe that almost hit the glare shield, and the autopilot disconnected, and she rolled to about 45 degrees of bank at 36,000 feet, Mach 8.3, without any warning. And so immediately, I went into what I'm trained to do, take care of the airplane first, fly it. And as I applied left aileron, my foot went in and for the left rudder, and before I knew it, I had full left deflection on the aileron and the rudder, and she stopped kind of at 45 degrees of bank, hesitating. And I asked Paul, I said, Paul, help me, push the nose over to break the angle of attack. So she came back. And throughout this whole confusion and being startled and not believing what's going on, I asked the other guys, what's going on? Because both engine instruments were normal. So here we are, I have an airplane that is not behaving normal, a full left deflection rudder. My body's telling me to do one thing, and my brain is looking at the ICAS, the engine instruments, and it's like both engines are normal. So it was very confusing 30 seconds.
And both engines were normal because of as we learned in the NTSB report, the separation of the cowling took out the EEC wiring, and so AC lies, DC dies. So the engine instruments for the right engine froze for 15 or 30 seconds or so.
30 seconds. It was just the longest 30 seconds of my life.
And so you got 30 seconds to contemplate things there as you're working through your startle factor there. What were some of the other thoughts that you were thinking this could have possibly been?
Well, as I'm trying to process this, obviously you're kind of in a shock. We were not frightened or afraid, but just trying to figure it out, because your brain is telling you one thing by looking visually at the instruments, and your body is telling you something different. I do remember asking Paul, what's going on? He says, I don't know, everything is normal. Ed, sitting in the jump seat, said, hey, maybe we had a mid-air collision. But then again, your brain is like, okay, I have a TCAS, I'm a professional pilot. I have a TCAS, there is no RA, there is no TA, there was no intruder at 36,000 feet. While you go through all this process, all of a sudden the right engine just goes blank.
The right engine gauges just disappeared.
So we didn't know this. Now we know that the reason for that was the information that was coming from the EEC to the cockpit just froze. So the last picture stayed on my upper ICAS. And that's why everything seemed normal, but obviously it wasn't. As soon as I saw the problem and noticed, I said, we have a severe engine damage, let's run the checklist. But the cockpit was shaking so violently, literally so violently, and the noise was so loud. I think I told you, it felt like, the old movies you watch, the submarine kind of goes silent and it starts sinking, and the
creaking noises?
Creaking and twisting metal noise. I can't get that out of my head. Or the metal building falling. That's kind of a sound we had. And I do remember when I asked for severe engine damage checklist, Paul tried to reach the ECL.
That's the electronic checklist on the 777. You don't use paper checklists. You use
Right.
this.
He tried to reach for that, and he couldn't actually put his finger on. So we went the old-fashioned way, auto throttle off, throttle back to idle, and it was all verified. And right engine shut down, and
From memory.
from memory idle.
Yes.
So after we shut the engine down, the vibration didn't stop. So just to tell the viewers, the vibration felt like, jokingly I say, if you're driving a 18-wheeler with no shock absorber
Yeah.
over the railroad track at 200 miles an hour. That's the feeling we had. Yeah. So after we shut the engine, the vibration didn't stop. I think in a scale of 1 to 10, initially it was like 15. And Ed, sitting in the back, just shouted, "Shut the engine, shut it down." No, I'm sorry, pull the fire handle. That's what he said. We already shut the engine. He said, pull the fire handle. But pulling the fire handle, things went more towards normal. So I would say between level 1 to 10, initially was 15, and then it subsided to about level 7. And that's what the shaking you see on the end, on the video. And that stayed with us all the way throughout until we landed and touched down.
A lot of shaking. So we talked about in previous episodes about we got pilot monitoring versus pilot flying. Whose leg was it on this one? It was.
I gave the leg to Paul. So I told him, Paul, there's a story behind it.
Okay.
Paul was not based in San Francisco. He was based in Washington, D.C. So he TDY to San Francisco just to fly to Hawaii. This was his second leg to Honolulu.
Ever.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Or at least on the triple. So I said, you can have the leg. And when this incident happened up there, and I just got hold of the control, it just, you go to your captain mode, and all these years of flying, whatever. I mean, I just grabbed that and said, this is not normal. This is not your normal engine failure. There's something seriously wrong here. So I said, I've got it, and if it's okay, I'll go fly it. And he said, sure, go ahead. And
you remained the pilot flying throughout this entire emergency because it took a lot of strength just to keep this thing upright.
Right, and when I do my briefing, when I fly with the guys and say, look, even if it's my leg and something goes wrong, because our pilots are so professional, like American Delta, we're trained so well. So even if I have an emergency, I initially take care of it, then give you the airplane, so I can have the big picture, talk to dispatch, talk to ATC, talk to the flight attendant, talk to maintenance, Tom C and all of that. But this was different. This really took every ounce of my energy and concentration to fly the airplane. She didn't want to fly. She just was not flyable. Everything aerodynamically, the wing was compromised and made it very difficult.
Remember, the diameter of a Boeing 777 engine is about as big around as an entire fuselage on a Boeing 737. And it's the amount of flat plate area drag presented in this configuration that is making this aircraft so hard to control.
So once we knew what the problem was, that it's the right engine, I asked for a severe engine damage checklist. Paul ran through that. I had already lowered the nose because my left eye I was looking at the airspeed drum. It was coming back, and we know these airplanes are very powerful, but you're not going to maintain 36,000 feet
on one engine.
And I always knew it is got to be around mid-20s. So I already lowered the nose because I saw the airspeed drum coming back. I already turned direct to Honolulu and asked Ed to give me direct Honolulu, verify, execute, put it in the LNAV. So I started heading, because as we come to Honolulu, you kind of turn left, bear left for
what's that? Bambo, yeah.
And then that takes you to the right downwind. But by us going direct, I think we shaved about almost 6 or 7 minutes of flight time.
And of course, the autopilot kicked off. The autopilot can't fly the airplane because it's so out of trim, and so and you were unable to re-engage the autopilot.
I believe 3 times we tried to re-engage the autopilot. So what happened is after the explosion, we had numerous lights going on. We knew the biggest problem was securing the engine and then deal with the rest of it. And I had my left hand on the yoke, right hand on the throttle. I had firewalled the left engine because I saw the airspeeds coming back. I'm already lowering the nose, and I knew I have 200 miles to go. So all these things going in my head that we're over the open ocean. There's no runways here, so it's not like, okay, let's go land here. I looked at my distance to Honolulu, realized that we have a big problem here. I have to baby this thing for almost 200 miles, 40 minutes to Honolulu. At the same time we start descending, we went IMC at 33,000 feet. So now I'm in the clouds, no autopilot, no auto throttle, flying a disabled aircraft in IMC condition. And after the initial checklist, which is severe engine damage, I asked for drift down. And Paul told me that 23,000 feet for the altitude and 240 knots. So as I'm slowing the airplane towards 240, about 242, 243, she started buffeting and stalling. So how do you recover from a stall?
Now you're in test pilot mode. You've got this battle damage. All your data is out the window, basically. You have to sort it out.
To recover from a stall, you got to max thrust. I'm already at max thrust. Lower the nose. I lowered the nose to gain more airspeed, and she started coming down like 4,000 feet per minute, and I could just see the runway going up and we're coming down here, so that wasn't going to make it. So literally, like you said, I became a test pilot. I had to create a new envelope. At 265 knots, it felt like she's going to fall apart. It was so much vibration.
Too much vibration from the windmilling engine.
Yeah, faster we went, the worse it got.
Yep.
Slower, I couldn't maintain, flight characteristic or stay in the envelope at 240. So I literally created a new window, 245 to 255 knots. I kept it within that window, 10 knots. And I think I've said this in many other interviews, that it literally felt like having a plate on the fingertips with a ball bearing in the middle and trying to balance
that,
for 40 minutes.
Hand flying. And of course the 777 has a TAC or a rudder assist program that helps with engine out situations, but that's in-op also, I believe, in this case.
Yeah, the TAC was inoperative for thrust asymmetry control. That was in-op. Autopilot was in-op. Auto throttle was in-op, and we also lost ACARS. All the communication to dispatch was out too. We did get dispatch on SATCOM, and the only time, I never took my hands off the control. It just, they got me set up. I told dispatch what happened, what's going on. Please notify Honolulu. We are going to Honolulu, have the equipment standby.
In fact, you were so busy hand flying the aircraft that the jump seat or somebody else had to get you strapped in for the landing?
Yeah, I remember that. Ed reached over my shoulders and strapped me in because I wasn't going to take my hat off that control.
You couldn't, just roll right back up on you.
Yeah.
And you didn't really break out of the weather solid VFR all the way down to what? 2,000?
About 2,000 feet.
Wow.
So, Honolulu was best runway, not only in time and distance, but our comfort level. I've been going to Honolulu for almost 30 years. Ed is from Honolulu. He was with the Coast Guard out of Honolulu base. So we come down, the deck was about 2,000 feet. And they have 3 runways in Honolulu. Runway 8 left, which was closed that day. 4 right was too short for the condition, having an engine out, hydraulics out, and all of that. So only runway available to us was 8 right, but doesn't have an ILS. So we had to shoot an RNAV approach IMC into 8 right.
Wow. But you were able to use precision approach guidance on the RNAV approach and capture a glide slope, a good glide slope in for that
Yes,
runway?
just do the LNAV, VNAV, yeah, non-precision, yeah, approach.
So you're flying the aircraft. How did you go about coordinating with the flight attendants?
Well, one of the things that FAA and NTSB gave us an attaboy was my Command Leadership Resource Management, CLR, which I put it to best use. I delegated the communication with ATC and the flight attendants to Ed initially. So he declared emergency, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday with HCF while I'm flying the airplane. And initially Paula and I wanted to work on the checklist, but it was just too much. So it literally became a three-man cockpit, put it this way.
And Ed is the jump seater in the the brand new guy in the jump seat.
Brand new
right?
guy in the jump seat. So yeah, we put him to work.
Man.
We put him to work. So Ed communicated with ATC and told them how many souls on board, how much fuel we had on board, and we go in direct, and we had an emergency aircraft leaving 360. And he also communicated with the flight attendant and told them, you know, we'll get back to them. We had everybody be seated initially, and after that, I asked Ed to work with Paul on checklists because it was just too much for one person. And I said, guys, I'm just going to focus on the instrument, keep the blue side up, and fly towards Honolulu. And you guys deal with the ATC and the flight attendants and run the checklist. So that part was great. And one thing the guys did really compliment, and I told the FAA and the company, was that every 7 or 8 minutes I would turn around and tell the guys, forget what just happened. Let's just focus going forward. Because, you know, we as pilots.
Or, yeah, like on a check ride or something.
Yeah.
You think you made a mistake, just put it behind you. Just keep
Just
going.
put it behind you. As a matter of fact, they use that as a theme for training. You know, some of our training with United is done with CBT, cockpit computer-based training. So they put that in. So one of the syllabus is focus forward. And so that was very helpful. And about 15 minutes into this incident, I asked Ed to go back there, because even after we did the checklist, the vibration and shaking was still there, and the noise level was really high. So I asked Ed if he can go back, take his iPad and videotape whatever is going on, so we have a visual. And that's when he came back with that engine shaking.
And did that help clear things up right away in your mind?
Yes.
What you were dealing with?
Yes, that, once I saw that, I knew what are we dealing with. And I wasn't sure at that time if anything has hit the tail or the stabilizer, because just looking how much, almost 1,000 pounds of material vacated the aircraft at 36,000 feet. And thank God, now we know that not a single item hit the tail. As you know, even a 10-pound at 500 knots would have been equivalent to having the tail shot at with a cannonball.
So now you're getting ready for the approach. First off, did you think you could even maintain altitude with the present situation at any altitude?
Well, the fact that I had firewalled the left engine, we had 90,000 pounds of thrust pulling on the left, and on the right side it felt like I'm flying a 4-story building through the air, because just every smallest adjustment on the thrust, she wanted to roll again. And since we almost stalled at 33,000 feet, I just didn't want to risk anything at lower altitude. So I kept thinking, altitude, airspeed, distance to the runway. And in my mind created this CDAP,
3 to 1 sort of?
3 to 1, a constant descent angle approach, just coming in and doing a curve, a right turn on an arc to runway 28 right, because by runway 8 right, because by then we knew that we only have one shot at this. And having max thrust just to maintain 1,200 feet per minute clean, we all believe that once we dirty up the airplane, she's not going to be able to go around. So there is no go around today. I mean, definitely, we just had one shot of putting it on the runway.
And so how did you configure for this approach? Well, first off, you did crunch some numbers to come up with a runway landing distance in the emergency, and those numbers came up good.
Yeah, so Ed, being as sharp as he was.
Fresh out of training, yeah.
Fresh out of training, right?
Yeah.
He just fired up the iPad again and did the irregular runway distance for that condition calculation. Came up with like 79.60. That's how much we needed.
Because normally your company, you would get this through the ACARS, but the ACARS was busted.
Oh, exactly.
So Ed had to just dive into the books.
You push a button, you just put 8 right, and you push one button, and
it's all there.
Magic happens.
But not today.
Not today. Yeah, not today. And that's why, again, having a third man in the cockpit was very, very, very important that day, extremely important. So mentally, what I did was, and I told the guys that I'm going to come high and fast. Because altitude and airspeeds are my friend. Altitude up to a certain point, but once you get on the glide slope or 3-degree glide slope, you got to lose the altitude. But speed is always your friend. So we came about 250 knots, about 12 DME. And I brought the power back slightly, put the flaps to 1. We got green light, it was a big sigh of...
Because you had no idea if the flaps were even going to work or not. And you were kind of planning on, if you had to, a no flap landing.
No flap landing, and the next thing was get the gear down. So we put the gear down and we got the green lights. So now here we are like, okay, at least we got flaps 1. And I was doing about 220 with the gear down. 1,000 feet, we put flaps 5. And came down the 3-degree glide slope. By that time we were visual, but I was on the instruments. The guy was just giving me vectors, turn left 5, turn right 5, stop, turn.
Your other crew members were doing this for you.
Other crew members.
Not ATC, yeah.
Other crew members. It's just like the old PAR and ASR approach, right? And they said, Captain, you just stay on the instruments and we'll get you down there. We'll get you down there. So, we came down the flaps 5 at 200 knots. At about 200 feet, we went flaps 20 and held 180 to touchdown. Because I knew the numbers were compromised, so the book numbers in the book were not going to really help us. And at the same time, I had Ed, had talked about this previously, that do brace, brace, brace. And it happened to be a very smooth landing. And we got off the runway at Romeo Golf, off of 8 right, and the fire trucks were standing by and started communication with the fire marshal.
And as you retarded the throttle to come on into land, there was that buffeting did not return to the airplane. It with the flaps down, she still handled okay at that speed, now that you're back down to sea level now.
Yes, yeah. As we got to a denser air, things got a little stiffer on the control. Up there was really mushy. Up there was really mushy, and it just got more solid, like more like an airplane feel to it. Good. Yeah, and I don't think I really was paying it much attention. I mean, I was just glued on that runway on the numbers, and looking at the instruments. He just went flaps 20. And I didn't even have to touch the power because the speed just started coming back by itself. So you called for the brace command on short final air or on final air, but it's somewhere during this interim, you invited one of the flight attendants up to the cockpit? Right, after we shut down and secured the airplane.
No, I'm talking about back when you were coming. Well, you were still coming into Honolulu. Did you have a flight attendant? Did you personally brief a flight attendant?
Yes, I did. So after Ed came to the cockpit with a picture, I asked Cecilia, our chief purser, to come, and I explained the situation. I said, well, obviously we have a big problem here. The right engine is totally destroyed. We have that part under control, but we have controllability problem. So we are not sure that we can drag take the airplane to Honolulu for another 25 minutes or so. This is like 15 minutes after the incident happened. So go ahead and prep the cabin for possible ditching. We'll keep you informed, and because their checklist is very long. It takes them like a good 20 minutes or so to go through the whole checklist for possible ditching the aircraft. Yeah.
But you did obviously a good smooth landing, and you're rolling out now. Now what are you going to do with all the people? They went through the brace thing, and you got to make a decision about what to do with the passengers.
Yeah, well, I was communicating downstairs. Paul was, I think, with the fire marshal, and then he would turn around and make sure that I'm hearing the conversation. The marshal said that there is no fire on the right engine, but there's fluid coming down. We didn't know was it hydraulic at that time or was it fuel. So I said, ask him if they think, if there's no fire, I would like to taxi the airplane to the gate and not add more fuel to the fire per se by, pulling the, opening the doors and having the slides, and maybe somebody would get hurt. So far we've been very fortunate. So, and everybody agreed, 3 of us agreed with the fire marshal, and they escorted us, and we went to the gate and shut the engine down.
Taxi back to the gate.
Yeah.
So you get back to the gate, and one of the pilots leans over and tells you, what does he tell you about hanging on to the...
Oh, actually it wasn't the gate. It was right when we got on Romeo Golf.
Okay.
And we set the parking brake, and we looked at each other, and big sigh of relief. And Paul tapped me on the shoulder and said, Captain, you can let go now. And that's when I realized that my left hand was glued on the yoke and the right hand on the throttle. And he said, for the last 40 minutes, I kept looking at you fighting this thing, and I was wondering when your body is going to give up. The shaking and just literally manhandling it, the airplane for 40 minutes.
Because that vibration of that windmilling engine, because we've lost one blade, 34 pounds, plus a good section of the other blade, 10 more pounds, is shaking the thing so much, and that's transmitted all the way through to the yoke.
To the yoke, and you can see them on the side of the aircraft on that video. That shaking was, I was feeling it on the yoke the whole 40 minutes,
So now back to the gate, you decide to come back and step out of the cockpit and say goodbye to everybody. That's got to be just overcome with emotions. There's a lot of things that it goes through your mind, and I do remember 2 things very clearly. And one was when I told Ed to declare emergency, and he goes and says, Mayday, 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 United 1175, experienced engine failure or catastrophic failure, vacating 360. There was a big pause on the ATC, or at least to me, it felt like big, because it was a big pause. You want him to jump on right away, and it's like the guy's probably thinking, oh my God, you never hear a 777 declare emergency over open ocean, right? So that was in my mind. And the other thing was that when they asked Ed how many souls on board and how much fuel, he said, we have hour worth of fuel and 381 souls. And all of a sudden something happened. It just felt like somebody poured cold water, ice water, down my back of my neck. 381 souls. That's a small town. I was responsible for their safety, and I made one decision that morning, and right then, that I can't fail them. I can't betray their trust. And today is not going to be the day that we die. And that one decision, I think, changed a lot of things for me, because the next day, Paul and I, over breakfast, start talking about what happened, and he asked me, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." It's a personal question. I said, "Sure." And he said, "When this happened, do you think this was it? Do you think we're going to buy the farm and this is it?" I said, "To be honest with you, when she rolled to 45 degrees of bank, which is really a sight to see on a 777 at Mach 8.3, and I was struggling to bring it back, it went through my mind initially that maybe I should do a barrel roll, bring it back." Because you've had some aerobatic training.
I have had that experience, yes, but the vibration kind of scared me, that I don't know what's going on with this jet. She might not make it through the roll, and maybe will fall apart. Come apart. And that's another thing that I want to tell you about, the blade hitting the fuselage in a second. So
you think you're going to buy the farm?
Yeah, we're going to buy the farm. I said, I really thought, yes, we are. And so I answered that question, and then he threw another question at me.
Yeah.
And was like, were you okay with it? And all of a sudden, I mean, just your whole thinking and body language, everything changes. And I thought for a second, I said, you know what? Yeah, I was okay with it. Lived a good life, done good, and I was okay with it. The only thing is that, you know, the first 30 seconds of this happening, my whole life went through in front of my eyes, just like a slow motion. My children's being born, you know, their smiles and, you know, the things we did. I mean, my life just went through right in front of me. And one thing that my dad was very sick. He was in the hospital, and I said to myself that not today. This is just not today. This is not going to happen.
You had some unfinished business that you needed to attend to.
Unfinished business. I said, I haven't said my goodbyes. So that was enough for me to just literally, you know, everything I've done in my life, Juan, I've always go the extra mile. And today I really had to go the extra mile to make this happen.
It's not an option,
Yeah. So after we landed, I told the guys, let's go stand by the front door, door one left, as passenger disembarking, and thank him for their courage. Thank him for, you know, being with us, and we are very thankful that we could get everybody down safely. And there was a lot of emotion there. There was a lot of emotion. That's when it started hitting you and watching.
You feel it right there, man.
Yeah, the women with the babies that they had no clue what's going on. And I'll never forget, there was a little girl, I think she was 6 or 7 years old. She had blonde hair, pigtail, and you know, a lot of, you know, some guys are trying to be tough, and mothers are crying, and I'm getting emotional at this point. Right? She comes up to me and said, "That was cool."
She likes all that.
Roller coaster ride, Disney World.
It helps break the ice a bit. Oh man.
And then we went downstairs to evaluate to see what's going on. So I have a few pictures I can share with you that shows the magnitude of the problem. And one thing we didn't know, so I think you and I talked about it, you know, I come up with something, I call it the 5 stars that lined up. Yeah, so basically we didn't know at that time that the blade actually separated from the engine and hit the fuselage.
So it was technically an uncontained engine failure in this case.
Technically, yes, it was uncontained. And after the incident is over and we get home, and you know, a few nights, I never had nightmares. I was never afraid of going back to the cockpit. But I kept thinking, you know, the what if scenarios. Because everything's just new, right? You walked away from it. What if
over and over and over in your mind?
What if something had hit the fuselage? What if something had hit the tail? What if we weren't 200 miles and we were at PET, point of equal time, or CP, right? All of that questions were going through my head, and I knew the answer is going to come either by myself, by thinking about it, or you know, as the FAA and NTSB and the company do their investigation. So more and more I thought about this, I came up with this theory or philosophy in my head that, you know, we are put on this earth for a reason. There is a purpose, a defining moment for each one of us, right? So I think my purpose that day was, or my defining moment was that 40 minutes, to be in that spot at that day. Because I have done certain things in my life, not only flying jets, but I'm a 3rd-degree black belt in karate. I do meditation. I like to balance rocks for fun. I do love to sail. I've been sailing for 35 years.
It's all balance.
So it's all about balance, right? So all of that came handy. And to fly that airplane and to keep it in that envelope and stay cool and make sure the other guys are like, because the biggest fear we had was, it wasn't like making it to Honolulu. It was like, can we stay airborne for another 1,000 feet or another 2,000 feet? Because the shaking was really bad. So the 5 star that lined up, May I share those with you?
Yeah, yeah.
The first one was, I always say to my friends and family that the 5 stars lined up that day for us to make that successful landing. And the man upstairs had a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
First one was that 3 minutes before this happened, I was in the bathroom,
Right.
out of the cockpit. I come down, sit down, put my seatbelt on, turn around to Paul to do the briefing, and boom, the explosion happens. Number 2, we had a well-qualified United 777 pilot as a OMC or jump seater in the cockpit. He was phenomenal. So as a matter of fact, when we were asked to go to Washington, D.C. for a Superior Airmanship Award, I made sure that Ed was included in that,
Right.
because literally that was a 3-man cockpit that day. Number 3, we were only 200 miles out
Yeah.
and 40 minutes. When they took their flight data recorder and fed it into the computer, they said, Captain, if you were 300 or 400 miles out or an hour out, this would have been a controlled descent with full power to the water. It's just like where we were, where the airport was, when this happened, we were able to manage it. Number 4 star that lined up that day was that almost 1,000 pounds of material came off that engine at 500 knots at 36,000 feet, and not a single item hit the fuselage.
Or the tail, hit the tail.
Hit the tail,
Yeah.
that's correct. Hit the tail. Even 10 pounds at 500 knots, it could have been catastrophic. I mean, it could have taken a tail off. And number 5, which we didn't know at the time, that the blade actually separated from the engine and hit the fuselage, and I'll send you that picture, but it hit the stringer, so the ribs where the wing attaches to the fuselage.
And it was it was just below a window too.
Yeah, about 3 inches below window. And when they did the analysis, they told me, Captain, if this had been 3 or 4 inches higher or further back, it would have either broke the window, which would have been really bad for that person initially, and maybe others. Or if you had hit 3 or 4 inches forward, now you would have a rapid depressurization problem. And
That would have put you below the glide path that would have got you back to Honolulu, potentially, if you had done an emergency.
that, and also, if there was a crack on the fuselage with all that shaking going on, it could have just opened the can, you could have ended up with a in-flight breakup. So at that point, it doesn't matter, even if you're Chuck Yeager, you couldn't have control it. So these are the 5 stars that lined up for us to make a successful landing that day. 6 weeks later, we got a call, 5 weeks later, we got a call that in about a week time, we're gonna have an interview with the FAA and NTSB. They had about 30 questions that they asked me first, then the co-pilot, and then the jump seater. And at the end, the FAA guy says, Captain, everything you guys said is identical to what we heard on a cockpit voice recorder. And by the way, a really nice job. And they said they're satisfied. The investigation is going to continue. It's going to take a long time, probably a year. As a matter of fact, it took almost 2 years. And the NTSB released their findings
Just
eventually.
came out,
Yep, a few months ago. And so we were told to expect a call from the Alpha rep only, whether we're going to Denver for some training or we're going to be released to the chief pilot. Who's
Hero or zero, you're gonna get the result, huh?
Hero or zero, that's a good one, yeah, I heard that, yeah. So 2 weeks goes by, and this is kind of interesting, and we get a call from the Alpha rep, which by the way says, guys, I'm not the only one on this call. We have the NTSB, FAA, and the company on board.
Holy smokes.
On the call, I'm like, okay. But he said immediately, there is no need for concern. They are here to tell you, to congratulate you guys. What a job well done.
Wow.
And to hearing that was really, really important. So that was really a high point of this. And the NTSB gentleman says, Captain, I really want to thank you for saving this airplane. You have no idea what a relief it is to talk to a live pilot rather than picking up the pieces from the bottom of the ocean
and trying to sort it out.
Sort it out and put it together. And the other highlight was that, after I got released from the investigation, got a call from the chief pilot, and he says, "Welcome back. You're going back to work."
Right back to work.
First flight, San Francisco.
Yeah, you got 15 minutes. Right back to the old route.
Yes. First flight, San Francisco back to Honolulu.
Yeah.
And the chief pilot in San Fran, he threw a little party. He invited me to his office. All the other managers came. He introduced me to the managers, who I am, what I did. And then we went outside, had a small cake, and he gave me the floor. There were like 40, 50, 60 United, heavy jet captains. We were right around the bank where everybody's taking off to go around the world, right? So he gave me the floor, and I talked for 2-3 minutes, and then I got a standing ovation.
Good.
To me, getting the respect of your peers.
That means everything.
That means everything.
Yeah.
So, a good ending.
Wow, outstanding, great story. So, as a result of this was the beginning of a series of fan blade failures that we just saw play out here recently again in Denver. It's going to turn out to be a very close. It's a very similarly related event. The NTSB investigation revealed a bunch of the issues that Pratt & Whitney has with dealing with these blades, and so they got to get to the bottom of that. Were there 3 other recommendations that you came up with, or that came out of this incident for you that...
Yeah, they asked us, what would we recommend, and I am I always encourage the pilots, whether I'm flying with captains on an IOE or co-pilots, to hand fly the airplane. These things become so sophisticated, and we get in an environment that is so comfortable and so cozy. You use the automation a lot. That day we didn't have that option. For things to go bad at the level they did that day, if I wasn't on my game, if I didn't go to my old-fashioned
stick and
rudder type of flying, who knows what the outcome would have been. So as a result, they are asking the guys in the simulators when they go for their proficiency check to hand fly the airplane, whether it's a visual approach or doing an ILS approach, more and more emphasis on a hand flying. And I think that kind of, if you go back, that was at Asiana crash. VFR, hand flying. And somebody said to me, but that was an experienced pilot. I said, well, let's talk about that for a second. Was he? He has 10,000 hours, right? Their SOP is like 800 feet, you push the autopilot on. At 1,200 feet, you click it off. So 800 feet is like 3 minutes. 1,200 feet is 4 minutes.
And the flight's 16 hours long.
Well, you do the numbers, 10,000 hours. Each flight of 15, 16 hours, you're flying 5 or 6 minutes. I don't think you're proficient, to be honest. To be honest.
And every time I go back for landings, currencies in the sim, one of the landings is a fallout from this, AQP. You hand fly the takeoff, approach, and landing by hand.
For us is like actually the engine ad profile. So when you're coming in, you can use the automation down within the base state, but before you can get to the marker, there's got a hand-flown single engine approach and go around, IMC. So that was one of the things that they implemented that, and they're doing that. And before this incident, we didn't have opposite recovery maneuver in the syllabus.
Very important.
Now they have that in there too, that
unusual attitude recoveries, where the sim operator puts the simulator in an unusual attitude.
In a very unfavorable condition, and you just have to grab the control, fly the airplane, recover the airplane, roll it, bank it, pitch,
And then the third thing to come out of all this was?
Well, the third recommendation was regarding ETOPS. If this incident had happened close to point of equal time or a CP, I don't think we would have such a favorable outcome. But then again, that's up to the company and the FAA to talk about it, because nothing like this has ever happened in the past. Hopefully never will happen again. And as we know, Pratt Whitney.
We know what the problem
PW
is.
4000 experienced the same problem last week out of Colorado. Fortunately, those guys were just on the initial climb stage, and they had the runway right behind them, and thank God, you know, they did a superb job.
Yep.
Again, their training kicked in, and they went back to the airport and landed the airplane safely with saving everybody.
Outstanding. And so you did receive the award. What was the name of that award again?
We received the Superior Airmanship Award. We were invited by ALPA and the United MEC to go to Washington, D.C., and they did an awesome job. The kids came along, the girlfriend came along. They treated us wonderful and put us in a nice hotel. It was a great ceremony, and the MEC chairman, Captain Todd Insler, took the stage. He explained about what happened up there. There was a short video put together by ALPA that, you know, explained everything, and then they gave me the podium, and I spoke for a few minutes, thanking the pilots and thanking the flight attendants, and also thanking the passengers for their courage. I did say one thing in that speech, and I don't call us pilots. I think, to me, a pilot is the guy that pushes a barge down the Mississippi River.
Really? Yeah.
I think we are aviators. You know, when we get to that level, we are aviators. And I always promote safety. I always encourage the guy to become the best they can in anything they do, obviously, but even in flying. And, you know, never forget your skills of stick and rudder. Always hand fly it. Obviously, if you're really in complex airspace, and things are not going wrong, not going right, and you have thunderstorms or wind shear, yes, use the automation. But you know, you're flying somewhere beautiful like Hawaii or coming out of San Fran, just fly it. Just treat it like.
Be comfortable with hand flying.
Like this one.
Yeah,
just hand fly it and enjoy it.
Yeah, that's it. Enjoy it.
Enjoy it.
All right, Captain Chris Behnam, thanks so much for the debrief on
Thank you so much.
United's Flight 1175.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
You do an awesome job, and I watch all your videos. It's such an honor to meet you in person.
Oh, are you kidding? This is a historic first for the Blancolirio channel, to have the actual pilot of an incident that we're talking about on this channel come up and tell the whole story.
And we happen to live only about, what, 30, 40 minutes apart?
Yeah, just right up the hill here.
Yep. So I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah.
I hope your viewers enjoy this, and you know, if there are more information comes up and I can share with you, I'll be more than happy to do that.
Excellent. And you do public speaking on this too now? Or
Yes, I do leadership seminars, and we started quite a few before the pandemic. Actually, I had my schedule all full through July, but unfortunately, everything is on hold. And I do have, just like you, a YouTube channel and Instagram, and channel Captain Behnam Persian. And also, I do motivational seminars, you know, for the young kids, you know, especially the high school kids. I just try to do goal setting workshop with them, encourage them to go after their goals or dreams, and you know, whatever ambition they have, whatever they want to do, there are tools out there to get it done. So encourage them to do that. And there's a book coming out in a few months.
And a movie too, maybe? I don't know.
We never know, but definitely
Would it be something, huh?
Definitely a book coming out, yes.
Okay, you guys can go ahead and start typecasting all the different role members of this movie here in the comment section below, and we'll put all of Chris's contact information in the comments or in the description below. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you here. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye-bye.
All right.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was a good one, man.
You guys are good.